All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of Leverage Lane here on the Ship It Nation YouTube station. We got the PGA edition. We launched it last week. We had a successful, I would say, NFL season with my guy Alex Blickle and I. So we'll be back every Wednesday, same time, same place, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, breaking it down. If there's ever any special weeks that we have to move around, we'll let you know, of course. But excited to talk about this one. I put it out there on X, to Scotty or not to Scotty. That is the question. I had some boths, or people already say, well, I can play them. I know I got more lineups. We are talking a single entry focus. So we're going to break it down from that. My man Alex has some good math here today, 0.4% in his favor. So he's going to be arguing from that side of things. But Alex, we're here. Amex, fun week last week. Bobby Mack moved for me. I got Goddard up with Corey Connors. Talked about that a little bit. You had some coverage here on the balance build. That was definitely something. So how was your week one for golf, if you will? And excited to be here this week with you again, my friend.
Yeah, it was a really good week. Main slate, just barely missed out on a min cash. I had the Keegan miscut, who was unfortunately my leverage lane. We'll talk about that in a second. But I had Goddard up, and then showdowns went really well for me. I think it was day 3 that was really solid. Nearly had a takedown. Just kind of stacked the early guys, and that worked quite well. So good week overall. It's been an awesome week on the props and pick'em side for NBA and NFL, so got that going for me as well. But yeah, very excited to talk about this slate. And I think the coolest thing about this show today is, we kind of made a promise to everyone at the start of the NFL Leverage Lane show that we weren't going to be afraid to disagree with each other. And then all season, it turns out you and I think of DFS so similarly that we didn't have many disagreements. Right. So we weren't able to showcase that very often, but we do disagree on a key point to this slate. So it's going to be really fun to talk through for everybody.
Yeah, I love that part about it. Like I was teasing in the Discord this morning. So what's the lane going to be today? I said, I think it's going to be an argument over a 0.4% math decision that has currently like the probabilities, but potentially wrong ones or fake. Like we'll know when we get there, but I think it's a really interesting conversation. It's really what separates. Somebody said it here earlier. Actually, it was Jerry Matt, who I'll show off his big week in a second. But Jerry Matt says, ship it in the house, second week of the season. And we get to hear all the narratives as if anyone knows. The big thing is, like we talk about all the time. A lot of people don't know anything. A lot of people don't even play DFS and like to still talk about it. So it is what it is. But at the end of the day, that's why I'm excited to do this show with Blickle. He knows about golf. He knows about DFS. He preaches what he says. He walks the walk, talks the talk, does it all. So I'm excited. We love playing the game. Last week was crazy for me. And if people are disgruntled by the first week or just PGA DFS as a whole, or if you're new to it, I got my main lineup with that build that I talked about on this very show. And then it was my core over on the site at Ship It, everything with the Goddard up and Connors combo we talked about. I had starting with McIntyre. I didn't end up going to Morikawa, thankfully, at the start of that. I said it was one or the other, but I kind of like the start. I ended up having Bobby Mack, JJ Spawn, Goddard up, Connors, and then I rounded it out with Thigala and Haotong Lee, kind of like lower owned plays down there that could have upside. Of course, the way the world works in PGA DFS, I was told Thigala was dead after day 1, battled back and put up a pretty nice score for that price. But just noting it, I finished 13th in the main $200 single entry. I had a good showdown week, and I still lost $200 on the week. So that's golf. That's pretty good for what could have been with all the upside that was there. But it's got to shake out your way. So before we get into it really quickly, just want to show this fast, just because our man Jerry Matt right there in the chat, he had a $730 into $12,620 in the showdown streets. You see his second place, $7,500 with McIntyre, Goddard up, Scott, Pendrith, Berger, and Patrick Rogers. And I got to talk about this because my man Wins a Lot is his name in the Discord, but one of the nicest guys. We met him at the event that we did in Arizona about a year and a half ago. He was there. Awesome dude. Always wishes everybody a good morning. Just plays smaller stakes typically, and in for $200 in that same very single entry, he shipped it for $20,000 up top. So congrats to Wins a Lot. Our man Jonesy had a 50K week, almost won the millie in NFL, but just wanted to call out those two. They're always here to support. So really appreciate that. Alex, where do you want to start for this one? I know the Scotty conversation is going to come up. We'll make people wait a little bit on that. There is a lot of talk, though, just about this event as a whole with the 3-course rotation, the ability to get 54 holes for everybody. Is there anything in that realm that you want to chime in on first before we start hammering down on the chalk, the tiers, and things like that?
Yeah, it does sound like at least there's a question of whether we're going to get some wind on Saturday. I just looked. I'm not seeing it. I use windy.com. It's like we brought up last week. Took a while to actually bring it up on the screen, but all of the models are showing like a max of 12 mile an hour wind gusts and sustained in the single digits. So I'm not worried about wind as of this moment for Saturday. But theoretically, if there was going to be one very windy day and then 2 very calm days, I would make it a priority to have players who are playing one of the easier courses on the windy day. And it's not so much easy versus difficult that matters in the wind. It's how penalizing our misses. So when you think of this stadium course, like you can go low on this course. There are a lot of birdie opportunities if you're playing the holes well. There's also a lot of water, and there are a lot of holes where if you hit a bad shot, you're going to get a penalty stroke, and a bad shot is going to cost you 1.5 strokes on the stadium course and half a stroke on La Quinta and the Nicholas. So if there was wind, I would prioritize not having guys on the stadium course on Saturday. I don't think it's going to be part of my process though this week.
Yeah, and one just note on that too. I'm going to pull it up here just so we have it for everybody because it's something they want to talk about. But Henley, Akshay, I'm not going to name them all, guys, but just to go through some of them. Keith Mitchell, McGreevy as a value play, Sepp, Sam Burns, Nick Taylor, Pendrith, like some of these bigger names that people are talking about. Some of the value plays: Stevens, Colley, Kiefer, Thor, Oberg, English, like all these guys play, including Scotty Scheffler, on top of some of the others I didn't even mention. So there's a lot of your pool you'd be declining if that's how you're thinking about building. So I would not go away from it because of that. There's also like some conversation out there on some of the shows, I guess, about the mentality of golfers. I mean, first of all, trying to get in the heads of all of these golfers would be pretty difficult. You're inside of one golfer's head, your own, I'm sure, at sometimes, and it's like that's enough as it is, and trying to think through that is tough. But I mean, people have talked about it plenty in the past, and I use this at the Farmers, typically with the North Course South. Some golfers like to go out and get a hot start on the North and then protect it on the South and hope to get through the cut. Other golfers like to grind out the South and finish it even and be like, damn, tomorrow's going to be a lot of fun because I already am at even, and now it doesn't mean it'll work, but now they get to play that North course, go low, make the cut, get into the weekend. I made a ton of money that way as well. So I think it's just hard to really predict the mentality of golfers. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, personally, what my own preference would be anytime there's a multi-course rotation is I would want to have to change courses the least amount of times possible. So that would mean like at Torrey, it would mean starting on the North, then go to the South. And that way, when we get to the weekend, I'm not changing again. So I only have to change courses once. Here it would mean finishing on the stadium course so that I don't have to change between round 3 and round 4 like everybody else does. But like, it's such a small, subtle preference. And even as I say, that's what my preference would be. Like, I'm also very aware that if I played the event 100 times, there's a good chance that my actual data wouldn't show any advantage to that. So again, it's not really something I care about, even though I know that like personally I would have that preference, but it's so small and inconsequential in comparison to everything else that we deal with.
Right. And also, I think that will matter more. And this is one that is obvious because it's like, it's just, they played it on Saturday, they're going on Sunday. But when you play round 4 showdown, I've noticed at this tournament over the years, it's obvious that the ones that play the day before and they get through the cut and then they're playing good, like it all lines up anyway, like so where it would show in the data. But the main thing is like the guys that played well on Saturday can ride that momentum. It's a question of if they're going to be going through that momentum. So if you want to set your lineup up that way, I would understand. My guy Haggy B says, hopped in, hit the like. Tambo, can you touch on how you see the opto build in the higher stuff, small field? That's pretty much what we're focused on here. So we will definitely talk about that. I know you're talking about the round 2 King of the Desert where it's 50 players remain. There's, someone calculated this morning, I think it was in your Discord, was saying Donnie Basil B or Baz Beal. He was saying like that there's like 27 pros that he counted. Obviously people have multi-entry, things like that. But it's pretty, anyone who's left in the final 50 at King of the Desert, I can tell you is pretty good at DFS, even if you don't recognize their name. So just noting that not a lot of super cheap options to get in on. So we'll talk about that, about Scotty's going to be the big conversation there. And then
it's going to be easier to talk about that after we kind of go through the math of Scotty lineups versus non-Scotty lineups too. Because There's kind of like an easy segue to how it applies differently to that contest.
And I think also it's going to be very dependent on what those numbers actually get to. I think right now there's definitely a discrepancy. People could see 30% Scotty, they could see 50% Scotty, and it's really hard to just say, oh, it's going to be 40 then. It's like, you can't really do that either. Like, you kind of really have to think through it. And that's what this conversation is typically all about. We try and talk through this as a conversation amongst bros more than just a show, but it's like we have a structure. We're going to talk through it with you guys and be able to break it down just like we did last week, and same as we did during NFL. The structure was pretty straightforward, but here we're going to talk about the weather. We already did, and the course and all that type of stuff, the chalk build, how to leverage the chalk build. And then this week, the biggest conversation is definitely around Scotty Scheffler. But where do you want to start it beyond that, or do you want to just hop right in and go there first?
I want to start with Scotty, but from an ownership perspective first, and then we'll get into the merits of playing him versus fading him. I think it's really important to understand how ownership is connected throughout the entire field. So if you are wrong about Scotty's ownership this week, you're going to be wrong about a lot of other guys' ownership just automatically as a result from that. So for example, like we now have Scotty at 34% in single entries. If he comes in a lot higher than that, let's say he comes in at 50%, then I'm going to be wrong, or we're going to be wrong about where we have Ben Griffin and Russell Henley and Robert McIntyre. They're not going to be between 20 and 30%. They're going to be 15 to 18% because there just isn't a way to fit them alongside of Scotty. If we have Scotty too high, if he comes in at 20% or 25%, then I'm also probably going to be too high on someone like Mac Meisner down at $6,900, who we have at 21% in single entry. Because if we're wrong about how many people are forcing Scotty in, then we're overestimating the number of people who need to go find the salary savings that Meisner provides to you. So same with like Max McGreevy. So I think the very first thing to understand about ownership this week is it's all connected, and it's connected in a predictable way where you can very clearly say, okay, if the ownership I'm looking at is too high on this guy, then it's too low on this guy and too high on that guy, and then so on and so forth. So that's a really kind of important thing to understand, because it means that you want to make sure that you're making decisions in your lineup that's going to lead to pretty unique combinations of players. And therefore you want to make sure that there's always a path for you to have somebody who's really low owned, or somebody who's, that high probability play that's balancing that out. And it's a lot easier to do when you're aware of the fact that, if you're wrong about this guy, you're also going to be wrong about that guy. So a really kind of just key week. And that's going to be a theme all season. We're going to talk about this a lot on this show, but I think we kind of have like the ultimate example here in week 2.
Yeah, and it's a good point to bring up, because a part of the conversation, and I know we're going to get there in a second anyway, but is that the value plays link to basically a 3v3 at the top, right? It's like either, in the sense of, if you're going to go, like any value plays that you can fit with Scotty, you can fit with a balanced build that's kind of like a hybrid, where it's like you're getting 3 guys in the 9K to the 10.4K range and then drop down. So you'd be swapping Scotty and 2 of those lower end guys for 3 of the guys at the top. And that's where sort of your math will come in, and we'll go through that. But I'll say this, just being upfront, and this may help your math case even further when we get there. But the way I feel right now, it's been talked about a ton, how the long shots win here. And, that if it's not the long shots, it's the high end option. Like it was Rahm winning it, even when he's talking shit about it and things like that. So for me, my point would be that I think a lot of people will get to Scotty by the end of this, because there is one thing that I got to go on my quick tangent too, is when 14.2K comes out and people go nuts, you really have to remember to look at the field. We talked about this so much last year, and this year you don't even need the 5K range to make this conversation happen. First of all, he does not need to win at 14.2K. If everyone behind him fails and he comes second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, we've seen events where Scotty came 10th and was still in the optimals of the winning lineups because the rest of the people around him did horrible. And it's just the way the builds work, or you needed more value plays that went in with that price. So his price doesn't dictate. We're not betting outrights. I know you're not betting Scotty at 2-1. Congrats. If you are, you might actually be fine if you were, but that's not what this is about. We play DFS. It's totally different than that. And that'll just lead to different thoughts on how our strategy goes based on, like we said, I think more people will lean to Scotty lineups, because when you think the value plays can be the winners, or Scotty can be the winner, the ROMs or the values, like it's always been, then why would it make sense to put them all together? So I do think we will see higher Scotty. Second of all, if you go to a steakhouse
and you expect it to be a la carte. We have to purchase all the sides separate. It's a higher end steakhouse for those that haven't attended. When you go, it's like if the steak is expensive and you have to buy all the other shit with it, then it's like, damn, now this meal got pricey. When people saw Scotty, that's what they think. But what they didn't realize, it was this expensive steak. The Scotty Scheffler steak has a free all-you-can-eat buffet with it down at the bottom. There's like 60 guys that you can play with Scotty in the 6.5 to 7.9K range to fit it all this week that are viable for sure. And what that's doing, to Alex's previous point, is making it so it's really not as expensive as you think, which goes back to why more might play him. And what Alex said of how it all goes together. I don't know, Alex, what you've got right now, but how many guys 7,900 and below? There's a few for sure, but how many do you think cross 10% as it stands?
I've got 5 projected over 10% in single entries. I think the point that you're making is one that I very much agree with, which is like there are so many guys here that it's relatively spread out, and you can kind of just go play your favorite guys in this range. And with a couple exceptions, like I think Rico Hoey is going to be extremely popular. Gerard has a chance of getting up there, and then as I mentioned, Meisner is going to get up there. Outside of those guys, maybe you can throw McGreevy in there as well. It's not going to be, a chalk fest down there, even if Scotty gets super expensive just because of the sheer number of guys. But it is also worth noting, like, remember the conditional ownership conversations that we would have in NFL, how, Pickens was a lot higher owned in Dak Prescott lineups than outside of Dak Prescott lineups, for example. We're going to see a similar thing here where, let's say Meisner is 20% overall. He might be in 40% of Scotty Scheffler lineups. So let's say you go to a John Perry, for example. We've got him projected at 9%. He might be 9% overall and 20% in Scotty Scheffler lineups. So even as you get into this cheap range, it's still worth considering, like, am I actually getting as low of ownership as the number is telling me? And usually the answer down here, if you have a Scotty lineup, is no. So in order to really differentiate and potentially separate from the field, you might have to go to somebody who's 2% or 1.5%, something like that. But to your point here, Tambo, like, there are guys who are viable at that ownership because of how many guys there are in that range this week.
That's the key. And again, I talk about this all the time. Our goal of this show is to make it so it's like evergreen episodes that with applied theory, where you can actually like listen to it for this week, but also apply it in the future. And one of the notes I always make, this is why you see so many solid PGA DFS players, and this happens across all sports, but they'll play 50% Scotty. And again, I know we're talking singulator, but just an example for your portfolio folks out there. If you play 50% Scotty, people will say, well, that's stupid. He's probably going to get to like 40 or 50%, and then they got no leverage. Here's the deal. Every single 100% of their 75 Scotty lineups in their 150 portfolio have 5 guys under 10%. They don't play any of those combinations that you just talked about. And there's the 6% owned guy, the 8% owned pivot, the 3% owned pivot. They're playing in a different game. And now the 40% of Scotty lineups that have Mac Meisner, like you said, or whatever the person is, McGreevy, any of these double M's, whatever it might be, if they have that, they have none of those. So if that one fails, that's a big portion of those Scotty lineups that are dead. So they actually have huge leverage if things go the way they are playing for, which is to win all the money with the Scotty lineups. So there's definitely levels to this. There's separators. There's things like that you can do. I do want to bring this one up too. It's nothing against anyone. We just love to interact with the chat. I don't know. He's saying Triple T. Doesn't Scotty only have one top 10 here? Seb Straka had a miscut, a 49th, and 1 4th place here, and then 1 last year. And we're talking about the best player in the world. So all that shit, that's what you go to the other shows for, people talking about all these narratives. All I care about is this week, today, this event, the ownership, the DFS play, the strategy, and how it applies. I don't care about any of that stuff because anything could change on any given day. And you see it all the time, especially in golf, man. This is a crazy sport. So I don't know, Alex, do you have anything else you want to add? If not, I think it's a good time to start getting into the conversation around what the build with Scotty looks like. I would start there because realistically, I truly do believe the Scotty lineups are going to get a boost by the time we get to lock.
So, I think the important point to make at the top here is Scotty himself is a very good play. There's no question about that. He's so far ahead of everyone else in win odds and top 5 odds and made a cut odds that, of course, he himself is a great play. The question isn't, is Scotty a good play? It's, are Scotty lineups good in comparison to non-Scotty lineups. So in order to check this, what I did was I grabbed Scotty and two guys in the 7K range who are the most likely to be paired with him, Rico Hoey, and I also grabbed Valimaki at $7,300. Both of these guys are going to be fairly chalky. They're also both near the top of our projections in that price range. So I wanted a pretty level playing field here. And then I grabbed the three guys who are highest in our projected top 5 odds outside of Scotty. So Ben Griffin, Russell Henley, and who was the last one? I think it was Siwoo Kim. No, Robert McIntyre. So Scheffler, Hoey Valimaki versus Ben Griffin, Russell Henley, Bobby Mack. And I wanted to compare how likely you are to get the winner from these groups of three, to have all three in the top 5, all three in the top 10, top 20, top 40, and to have all three make the cut. You are clearly more likely to have the winner if you have the Scotty side of things. You're about 3 times more likely to have the winner according to our simulation data. I should mention there, we are very above market on Scotty. We have him at 33% to win, which would be 2-to-1 odds. So clearly we're high on market, and that's part of why we're showing that you're 3 times more likely to have the winner if you have Scotty. But then you get into the combinations of top 5s and top 10s. You're 4.5 times more likely to have all three in the top 5 if you do not have Scotty. You're 3.7 times more likely to have all three in the top 10 if you don't have Scotty. 2.9 times more likely to have all three in the top 20. 2.2 times more likely to have all three in the top 40, and 1.5 times more likely to have all three make the cut when you fade Scotty. Then you get to the point of, okay, what happens if Scotty does win? If he wins and you have him at 30% or 35% or 40%, he's not really helping you separate because you still have to beat 30% of the field minimum. So everything to me is screaming, don't play Scotty. The non-Scotty lineups are better. I know you disagree, and I'm really excited to kind of talk through the rest of this with you.
Yeah, it's hard to battle the exact math. Like when you have it like that, I guess it's just like you say, with some of those probabilities are going to be just based on it's equal because what you're giving Scotty, like you said, is the higher factor. My biggest disagreement is like, 1, we don't know for sure how high we'll actually see him. 2, the separation of like needing those 3 guys. Like for example, like the automatic of you're just picking 3 guys, and I get that. But when someone has a single entry, they have to get 3 things, two other things right, or 3 other things right in your case. So for me, the Scotty one feels better. And I think there's so many options down below that you can find your way through it versus like Ben Griffin, Henley, and Bobby Mack needing to be those 3. We just saw last week where 2 of the, like, look, Henley and Griffin, what did they, I don't know what the actual finishing was, but obviously Bobby Mack outdid them. Like we can definitely see guys like that not come through. Scotty is just so much more likely to be the safer route there. It is going to be a higher dollar, smaller field typically that we're talking about. I think the way I'm going to separate is not necessarily him as the winner at 35% owned or 38% owned, but I think with the guys that I have down below, there's a high chance that there's just such a bigger pool to pick from that I can get that. And I don't know if your top 5s and top 10s percentages, especially once you stretch it to top 10s and top 20s, are going to be as valuable because so many times Scotty sits inside the top 5%. And now we've got 2 other guys that I can bring along that I feel just as comfortable with down below as I do the guys up top, but I only need to get Scotty. I need to get Scotty right. That's what it really comes down to. I think it's close. I know the math is there to support you. I'm just saying for me, I feel better about that build going in because I think with the guaranteed 3 rounds, all these other factors, I think there's just more likelihood. We have so many options down below. I don't feel forced into sort of going to those 3 and handpicking the right 3 in a 15-man range, as opposed to going down low where we'll probably get a lot of scattered scores that are pretty close.
Well, to that point, I'm kind of a dope because I should have mentioned this off the top, but these groups of 3 are identically priced. So to me, it really is about these actual groups of 3 because from there, you can do the exact same thing in the lineup, whether you went to Scotty or outside of Scotty. So it's about this 3v3 to me. And the other point I'll make here is, if anything, these numbers are actually biased in favor of the Scotty lineups, because if you have the Scotty lineup, you pretty much can't use any of the other 3. You can't use Griffin, Henley, or McIntyre. Like maybe you mathematically can, but then you're getting to some really awful players at the bottom of the field. If you have the Griffin, Henley, McIntyre side, you can absolutely use Hoey or Valimaki, or like you can use anyone in that range. So if anything, I think these numbers are actually biased towards the Scotty lineups. And so again, like that, it makes me pretty confident in the idea of going away from the Scotty lineups. The one thing that would make me question this is if Scotty got low enough in ownership to the point where he was actually a potential separator. I don't have like a number in mind of when he would go from a chalky play that can help you separate to a separator. 15%, 18%, like my natural instinct is to say under 20, but I don't know like what the truly correct answer is there. And honestly, it's probably not like it's certainly not a binary thing. It's, he'd be a little bit of a separator at 20. He'd be very much a separator at 15. He'd be an outstanding separator at 10%. So of course it's not like truly binary in that way, but
I don't think that's happening anyway. So, I mean, that would be one on that side of the battle. I guess the other side of it is like, again, and it will sway. So down there, like my takeaway is this too. I see a bigger swing maybe than you do on like the Ben Griffin versus Sam Burns and Russell Henley versus Matt Fitzpatrick. And to your point, you said it has to be equal 3v3. My thoughts are like with Scotty, I get to open up the book because the difference in the Hoeys versus the guys around him are much slimmer. Like there's Ryan Gerard right there underneath him. There's Matt Wallace. There's Brian Harmon. There's Alex Smalley. There's Matthew McCarty next to your, Kiefer, Thegalas, Patrick Rogers. Like now I got more opportunity. However I build doesn't mean it's going to be right. I'm saying, but to me, I got more options to sway through with the comfortable Scotty option. And it already seems pretty close. And then up top, you really can't sway. So I don't know if for all that ownership and separation you're saying sticks with Scotty, like that you don't really get, because I'm arguing for you in this case of saying, I don't believe he'll get to a separator for us. You're forced into that 3-man group essentially in saying that's the one that gives us the math in our favor. Otherwise it would probably lean closer to the Scotty side because you can't, in your example, do you want Burns, Fitzpatrick, Harry Hall? Or does it, to your point, it has to be Ben Griffin, Henley, and Bobby Mack?
What was that 3? I can get it up real quick.
That'd be good. Yeah, it's a good exercise. Yeah, I went down to Burns. Yep. Do it this way to keep it fair, actually, to keep it simple. Go to Cantlay, which is 200 up.
Okay.
Go to Burns, which is 200 up. And then I guess put Siwoo in just for the ultimate swap here, because then at least you get some fair. He's actually higher than Harris English or anyone, but I was trying to give exact 100. But go to Siwoo, for example.
Okay, so let me start by saying this is not a group that I would use.
Right.
Yeah, but I actually love doing this. This is really fun. So this makes it super, super even. You are now about 10 times more likely to have the winner with the Scotty side. You are about almost twice as likely to have all 3 in the top 5 with the Scotty side. You are roughly equal in terms of having all 3 get the top 10. You're about you're between like 1.1 and 1.5 times more likely to have all 3 make the top 20, top 40, and make the cut if you fade Scotty. So here it becomes higher floor to the non-Scotty side, higher ceiling to the Scotty side in a pretty clear way. Whereas previously it was like the only time that you have an advantage with Scotty is the winner, and then you're getting a huge advantage everywhere else. And of course, like because Scotty's as popular as he is, you're not even getting a real advantage from the winner. So this does
Good
make
exercise.
It look. If we instead looked at some of the like. I personally probably wouldn't play Griffin, Fitzpatrick, and McIntyre because those 3 Griffin, Henley, and McIntyre because those are 3 of the 4 most popular beyond Scotty. So I'm gonna want at least one guy different. But if we went like Ben Griffin, Sam Burns, and Siwoo Kim, or let's not use Siwoo. Let's go to someone else. Let's go Sepp Straka. On Pat's show yesterday, Pat and I both really like Sepp. So if we went Ben Griffin with who did we have second? Sam Burns.
you're going to go up 200 from Henley to Burns and down 200 from McIntyre to Sepp, and it fits exactly the same way.
Yep. So
But
Griffin,
Griff,
Burns,
your guy.
Straka. Yeah, Griffin, Burns, Straka. So here again, you see you're about 4 times more likely to have the winner with Scotty, and then everywhere else, the advantage is to the non-Scotty lineups, but it's not significant. It's all between 1.25 and 2.5 times more likely for all 3 in the top 5, top 10, top 20, top 40, and all to make the cut. So, and like anyone watching, listening, those odds are going to change based on your projections. This is what we have over at FTN. But I think the important thing is this is just the way you should think about it, right? It's okay. I'm finding my favorite guys in this area, and my favorite is going to be dependent on how they project, but also their ownership. How can I find a way where I'm getting more unique than the field, and I'm getting a mathematical advantage in how my guys project? And I think this just, like, for me, it's pretty clear, at least the way we have things project and the way that I'm seeing things, that the advantage is on the non-Scotty side. But I will say, Tambo, like, I'm really glad that you like Scotty, because I was going to have to start to really question my ownership projection if I went on the Pat Mayo show yesterday and both he and I think we should fade Scotty. And then if I went on the show today and you and I both think we should fade Scotty, like, I'd think, oh, damn it, what if he's actually going to be 20%? Am I going to hate myself? Well,
I love that you guys like to keep convincing people to fade him, because that's good for me. But I'm saying, especially in MMEs where I think it's just like going to be a clean. We're not often going to get a field that sets up. So people say, oh, it doesn't set up well because it's a birdie fest. I get all that side of it too. I understand it fully. All I care about is the DFS math side of where, like I said, I have a pool. My point on that example we just gave, and I think you really put a bow on it perfectly, is if you really like the range of Cantlay, Ober, Griffin, Burns, Henley, Fitzpatrick, McIntyre, Hall, Straka, English, Siwoo, and you want 3 of those guys more than you want to pick from down low, then you should go that way, because the math can actually even lean more in your favor slightly. I'm saying it's not a far enough advantage. And I'm also saying, for me, my money, my investment, my thoughts, and I'm not fighting math here. Math is math. I'm saying we also further went with the exercise to explain that it's the exact same 3 scrubs to start. And we didn't even pick those scrubs. We just said those 3 you're not getting to change them. It's when I have Scotty and a couple guys that I can randomize out of 30 more guys, and let's say in the range of Hoey and McCarty, whoever the math was on originally. My point being, for you, you don't really have leeway. What Alex is telling you is facts, because it's math, but it's less leeway than you think unless you buckle into Griffin, Henley, Bobby, Mack. Why wouldn't you? Those are 3 really good options. But if you don't like those guys, or you're trying to move it around too much, then you can't double dip and say, but the math said this and the math said those 3. And for whatever you're not getting in separation on a Scotty win, say, well, he doesn't even really separate me that much because now I've got the 30%, 35% winner everyone has. Do you want the group that everyone has to go to now based on the same shot? Like, you need all 3 to do their job, and you need Scotty to not do his job. And you are really kind of on the math side. If that's your argument, you're buckled into those 3. And this is why it's interesting observation, but just to note, you even said it yourself, to be clear, those aren't my 3. I'm just doing the math to show why these could be better. The good news is it's volatile. It's golf DFS, PGA DFS. It can easily switch to where your guys could be Ben Griffin, Sepp Straka, and Kurt Kitayama. And while they currently don't have the numbers, the argument can be made with the other 3 guys that what if they're the guy in that example, if you really like them, you're substituting them in, and it's almost like in NFL DFS, Alex, where we're like, you know what? The game script is going to flip. Judkins and the Browns are getting popular, but it's so close on the other side with Breece Hall and the Jets at home. It's still Dylan Gabriel on the road. Let's just shift our projections in our brain or do it in the optimizer with our sims to say it's actually going to be this way today. And if it was that way, they would substitute in for those 3. So to Alex's point, and to finalize from my end, if you really like 3 of those guys up there and you just have that, you feel better about that than Scotty and 2 extras down low, then I would run that for your single entry, because you do get 3 options up top you love, and you still get to be different on the ones below. Our math example was just using those 3. But if you only have 3 or 4 that you like down below, but you love 5 or 6 up top, to Alex's point, your best bet would probably for your lane this week, we'll get to ours later, kind of got to him already, but that would be Scotty, fade, picking your three from Alex's example. It doesn't have to be his three, but your three, giving them the win equity and the odds and the numbers of the three he explained, and then picking your three down low. If that's the case, I think it's fine. The math has just said it's good, and I'm okay with that. Like, I definitely think there's nothing wrong with it. It's just an exercise to show people how it is a math game, and then how you can think about it and apply it in your own way when you're building and going down your lane. Alex, anything else you want to add to that side of things? Because I think that's a really interesting exercise that we can use in the future if people like it as well.
Yeah, man, you got to be a hardcore DFS player for your automatic like NFL callouts to be Judkins and the Browns versus Breece Hall and the Jets against Dylan Gabriel. That's that's a great one. It's a great one. But yeah, I very much agree. I also think the point you were making can be flipped, where like you were talking about, okay, if you've got guys that you really like at the top in that 9 to 10K range, and you don't have guys that you like in the 6Ks, then maybe the decision's made for you. It also flips. If you feel really good about a handful of guys in this like upper 6K, low 7K range that aren't getting much attention, you think these guys should be the chalk down here, and they're going to be 3%, and I think that the chalk is bad, then okay, like you feel like you have a real mathematical advantage within those Scotty lineups. So that's the time to go play Scotty. Like on the show yesterday with Pat, I mentioned like I don't think I'm going to take a risk on Michael Brennan, but if I were going to take a risk on Michael Brennan, it would be in a Scotty lineup, because now I'm saying, okay, I actually need ceiling from these guys. I need these guys to be my separator. So Brennan makes sense because he's going to be really low owned, and we already have seen that he has the upside to go win the golf tournament, where Takumi Kanai is not going to do that for you. Maybe he does well, maybe he gets a top 20, but he's not going to go win. You actually can get that from a Michael Brennan. So thinking through guys and the price ranges that way, it's also worth noting, like that also means that if you have a very balanced lineup, your decisions in that low sevens, which you're still going to have to go to, because if you have if you have the three that I mentioned from the start, the Griffin Henley McIntyre pairing, you're left with $6,933. It's the same as Scheffler, Valimaki, and Hoey. So like you still have to pick guys from that range, but the guys, the type of player that you should be targeting, is probably going to be different if you have a Scotty lineup versus if you have a non-Scotty lineup, even though you're looking at three players from the exact same price range.
Yeah, one guy you mentioned there, Michael Brennan, could be a bounce back. I know a lot of people are stumped about a different Brendan Todd, that is. But did you know the Todd father just shot a 69 yesterday on the Korn Ferry Tour? It's wrapping up today. He's sitting top 25 right now. So if you're stumped on where Brendan Todd is, he'll be back soon. The Todd father himself, if you're looking for him. But Michael Brennan could be a good play we go to this week. What do you think?
Are you bringing up Todd because you know that Todd is a popular name in my Discord, and we have a Todd jar where people have to actually pay it?
People are stumped, man. People are stumped about the Todd father. Yes, I incorporate many things into my shows, Alex, and one is always involving the people. So I love that. Shout out to Stump. I think this is interesting, though. To your point there of, again, I know it's a single entry show and we're going to stay in this lane and keep rolling down it, but I will say, like Ryan asked here, this is what I'm saying about, speaking of stumped, where people get stumped is they say like, oh, it's all about Scotty. The conversation does end up being about Scotty, but it's really to just repeat it one more time, what we just talked about. If you were looking down low and you love 30 guys in the upper sixes and lower sevens, then that means you would be very comfortable with 4 or 5 of them in the lineup. The best way to play 4 or 5 of those guys is going to be with Scotty based on the numbers and looking at everything. And if he doesn't have his week, then those lineups go in like we always say, they go to the pasture. They're dead, right? They move on. If you have a portfolio, you can get after it even further. But to Alex's point, I'd want to be picking people down low that have the upside. So if it is a Scotty week where he finishes T5, T8, whatever, there's still a chance, because if those other 3 dudes up top if they have the same, if Russell Henley and Griffins and guys like that, not Bobby Mack because he had a good week, but if the other guys have their sort of mediocre week this week and Scotty still finishes T5, but it's a bunch of guys around him that were from the upper 6 and lower 7K range. So the Kiefers, the Whaleys, the Novaks, the Thigalas, the McCartys, you name it, all these studs that can definitely, young studs or up and coming players that can definitely do the job. If you have them sitting all around him, what lineups do you think are sitting up at the top? So you really have to look at the whole field and not just focus in on Scotty. If your answer is, well, the reason I like Scotty is because there's like 30 guys down low that I can play with them and I feel great about it. Well,
lean that way. That should help you decide what you're doing. It also should be a decision, again, knowing it's a single entry show, but to the big guy in the sky, our man DJ and RIP, but he always said this, and it was like the best advice to me that he ever gave was your player pool should dictate your contest selection. Everyone just runs. I think you should always be practicing your single entry. I think you should always be practicing your one lineup versus single entry. Like if you win a ticket, how do you play it? Like I'm only going to have one lineup. Everyone else is going to have 50 to 150 or 27 in a mega up to 150. So work on that. But if you like 50 golfers this week, how you in the single entry streets? Like that doesn't even make it, you're going to leave so much on the table. If you like 10 quarterbacks on an NFL week and you can reasonably get it down to 5, great, you've cut it in half, but how you in the single entry streets only? Like you like 5 quarterbacks, you could be leaving so much on the table. And that's why you get every week people saying, oh, the last few guys out of my pool, or, oh, the last switch I made was this, or I would have went with that. You're allowed to do it. Like you can extrapolate on all of our thoughts. If you like what Alex said and you like what I said, and you're like, damn, I got the best lineup of both, play a 3 max, put the Alex version, put my Scotty version, and then on the last one, maybe you combine the two and say, man, the best version of blending them actually ends up being another Alex lineup. It's another balanced one, but I get these guys instead, or I drop down a tier or two, and if Scotty beats me, he beats me. But now you've played a 3 max like a single entry. In a way, you've worked around a very small pool, but if you like a lot of golfers, you should be extrapolating it out from there. Anything you want to add just on that from a contest selection perspective? Again, we spend time on single entry, but I think it's important for people to note that for their own gameplay as well.
Yeah, someone asked earlier about like what we expect to see in the King of the Desert, and I think using this same type of like mathematical approach, I think you probably, man, I honestly, like I could see it going either way. Because on the one hand, I think it's the top 15 out of 100 advance. So that does make it.
It's out of 50. I think they got it down to 50 now. So I think it's 15 out of 50 are going to move on this week.
Okay. So yeah. So they're like, you might not need 6 out of 6, right? So maybe it's just 5 out of 6 that you need, or maybe it's you only need 5 out of 6 in the top 40. And so there, the math will skew back a little bit in Scotty's favor. And so from that, like I could very much see Scotty coming in at 50% there. But I could also see a scenario where people are really targeting a floor, and they want it so that like they can make as few guys as possible in their lineup have a really bad chance to make the cut. And maybe they go more balanced there. So this is a weird one. Like usually I feel very strongly that the most popular guy in the field is going to be significantly more popular when you get into that type of contest. I'm actually not this week since he's also so expensive, but I like my range of outcomes. I think for Scotty in regular single entry is probably between 25 and 40%, maybe 45%. In that contest, it might be like 20 to 60%. Like it's a huge range of outcomes there, which unfortunately, like I apologize. I know that's not super helpful, but I think it is helpful to actually know like how much uncertainty you're dealing with when it comes to his ownership.
Yeah, I would try to get to the most accurate ownership you can based on the thoughts of, like I said, a lot of pros, a lot of people playing. And if for those that have multiple entries, I can almost guarantee you they're maybe not min unique 6, but they are definitely going to play to get one in. Like it's 500 grand to first, and it's literally 10 grand or something. If you cash out this week, 12 grand, it's not even close. And for many of these people, don't forget, these satellites, by the way, were running at 3K a piece and 2K a piece near the end. People are in very heavy on this. They will be playing to win. I've obviously played in these over time and can tell you pretty much exact strategy. If I was playing in it this week, I would play Scotty and I would play 5 guys under 10%. And it's called Heverage. I've coined it and trademarked it in one of my courses, but it's heavy leverage. It's Alex's point exact. You just auto assume because it's a 3-course rotation that everyone's going to get 6 of 6. That's not true at all. It's definitely not true. There's going to be tons of people that miss the cut on Saturday on Stadium just because of a bad last hole or pressure gets them or whatever. If it is really high, I expect that fine, but only one more round. And in one more round on Stadium course, guys can go backwards. So there's 6 of 6s that can go backwards. I would not want Scotty and a bunch of chalk. This is not a cash game. Only 15 of 50 move on. 15th is the same as first. 20th, very different. So for moving on this week, you're dead, you're out, you're done. So I personally, to Alex's point, would be more high on the Scotty side because the 5 of 6 can play.
And I'm not like forcing, but I'm really looking at those other 5. I want good options upside, not because people told you they're good. Go look at the numbers, go do the math, look for leverage, and true leverage exists when you can find like optimal scores. I know you guys have the GPP scores. You can start to see what is optimal and what looks like it's going to actually be leverage in that field. And the more accurate ownership projections you can get, the better. Apply it towards that. I mean, I know I don't have it right now, but I know if I was in that tournament, the exact lineup I would have tomorrow, right? Because I know how I would build it exactly. And I would know what it looks like. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I'd be very happy with my process and how I played it to move on in that tournament. If I had multiple entries, I would play a Scotty and a non-Scotty just because that would be easy to cover and be able to easily get different as well. And you need one to get through. You have to pay off those seats, man. They're just so important to get to the final round that you got to do it. I remember one year, another NFL thing, but just quick side story. We tried, like I said, treat it like stories and back and forth versus just topics. But it was Whistles Go Woo in the King of the Beach one of those years that one of these trophies that I have, he didn't get any through to the finals and he had 5. And he played all 5 of them the exact same to try and move them through. And he said after that was one of the biggest mistakes because he said you just need 1 in the final. Like you need to have 1 there to be able to get to the top. And he's like, would it be better to have 5? Yes, there's an argument. And he's a math superstar, math wizard. But he's like, the point was with how top heavy it is and with the way the tournament sets up, he could have done like a 2-2-1. He could have done a 3-2, do anything, but just try and get at least 1 there. If you want odds, he should have done a 3-2 is what he basically had said at worst instead of a 5 out of 5 the same. So hopefully that helps you, Haggy. I wish you best of luck, man. But Alex, where do you want to go next with this conversation? What are you thinking is next?
Why don't we go through some of the chalk? Both we've already done a lot of it, but like the chalk that I'm seeing up top, outside of Scotty, Ben Griffin, Russell Henley, Robert McIntyre, Siwoo Kim. Do you have a preference out of those 4? Do you have any rules that you'd play if you weren't using Scotty, like max 2 of those guys, max 1, anything like that?
I think it's going to happen more naturally. So less on the rules side. If I'm going like for strategic or starting points in that, I actually prefer Cantlay and Oberg before I do of like the math tells me on Griffin and Henley. And they just feel a lot safer. I think they're options. I think they'll be popular in like one and dones and things like that. But for me, I'm looking more at Cantlay, Oberg. Not saying you have to start with 2 of them. I'm saying like I could start with one of them. I also think there's some interesting builds this week if you can get comfortable in that 9K range of like, let's just use a random example. You said you guys liked Sep. If you had like a Sep Siwoo and then 2 upper 8Ks, I mean, and that's getting very aggressive for this event, but it just changes the dynamic completely if you were to do something like that. What are your thoughts on those ranges?
Yeah, I actually think Ben Griffin is my favorite up here just because of how far ahead of everyone else that he projects, obviously outside of Scotty. So I want the one guy who can really like close the gap with Scotty a little bit in terms of the top 5 odds and top 10 odds and such. From there, I'm very comfortable getting different off the rest of this chalk. I think the one difference I have to you is instead of going up to Cantlay and Oberg for that contrarian nature of these pivots, I'd save money and go to the Hall Straka English route and save like $1,000 per player with that.
Yeah, I think it's, again, there's going to be, that's why when you said like, where would I go to that point is like, I think it's going to just be natural that it ends up that way. But for me, Cantlay, Oberg above those lower 9Ks. But like I said, that build would be unique and it could be anything. If you like Henley Mac, it's still different to get like a Henley Mac and then drop down. But I think it's like more interesting if you can get like a Cantlay Oberg and then 2 8Ks and 2 6s, for example. Mm-hmm. That is the talking point for sure. I don't know if it's a good time to segue there, but I've got like a bunch of guys, man, like Nico, Chris Kirk, Meisner, Eckroat, Gim, Jordan Smith, Lee Hodges, Michael Brennan, who you mentioned, Bud Cauley, Max McGreevy, ADDC down there was leading, I think, at one point last week. Eric Cole, David Ford, Bo Hostler, Hoagie, your boy from last week. I played him in some showdown stuff. Like these guys are all relevant options here to me. Like it's the same 3 rounds. They're going to go out and shoot, fire away, make birdies. They're very capable. So do you have any thoughts? I mean, even like Jaeger Bombs, Kanaya, there's a lot. Clanton is down here. Like, these are, whether they do good or not, I'm just saying these are definitely viable options to me. So I love the MME stuff this week, but from a single entry perspective, if you were looking for a way to get different, I think 2 10Ks, 2 8Ks, and 2 6Ks, when you consider, everything I just said, and but I don't like half those guys you said. Okay, but if you like 2 of them, you can make this work. You could still get 2 8K guys and 2 10K guys, no Scotty, and build that up. I think that's pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, Dan Brown is my favorite down here. Kind of similar idea. Really good iron player. I love how often he spikes with the irons and how often he spikes with the putter. Obviously, we have a small sample on him on tour, but if he can put those together in any given week, you can see some really low scores, and obviously that's what we need to see this week. So I think he's a really solid value down here at crazy low ownership. So like that.
What is he, 63 or 65?
67.
Oh, 67. I was looking for him. I couldn't find him in either bucket. I was like, what did I miss? Yeah, no, that's was there something about him last week too that we liked, or was he in there last week? I can't remember.
I think he played fairly well last week.
Yeah,
but
I'd have to look it up. But go ahead.
Yeah. Out of the chalk value, is there anyone who stands out to you as good chalk versus bad chalk? We've got McGreevy, Meisner, Hoey, and Ryan Gerard as the 4 main guys down here.
I don't know how to phrase this best. So the thing about them is, one, I just don't think they're going to get crazy. It's what you said. They're going to get up there in single entry stuff, which is what we're talking about. So yes, it matters. But one thing I'll say is it just doesn't feel good to go to any of them as much because why Hoey's popping. Go look at his stuff. You could see it, but it's there's also still 30 guys around him both ways. You can literally go $300 up this way, $300 down that way. And then you can also make cases for guys that are 500, 800, 1,000 less. So it's it just is really tricky for me. And again, when I get to my lane for my lane from my main might be a new one, but when I get to that, it'll all be clear and some might catch on already, but I don't actually have favorites on them. I think Hoey looks the best on paper, but that is not the way to do things always. So he'll make it in. I like Hoey more in my Cantlay Obergs, where it's I'm flipping around from Scotty Hoey. It's I have Cantlay with Hoey. So if Hoey comes through, but your Scotty doesn't, you're well, of course that loser Scotty didn't come through. He does good every week. I'm not on him when I do finally go all in, he sucks. That could happen. But I'm just saying that's a quick example where I look at it. Did Dan Brown finish 19th last week? That sounds right.
Certainly possible.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, T19 with Ben Griffin, Russell Henley, both finished T19. So basically, Daniel Brown is just as good as Ben Griffin and Henley. That cancels out Alex's math earlier, guys. That'll be the end of this session. Sorry for that. So go ahead.
I really like the point you made about using Hoey if you have an Oberg Cantlay lineup, that sort of thing. I also think the only guy that I view as bad chalk in this category is McGreevy. I just don't think he actually projects that well for his price. The other 3 do. The reason for the fade is less about fading them because they're likely to fail and more about fading them just because the opportunity cost. If you're using a really chalky guy down here, then you're missing out on an opportunity to have a 3% separator. And as you have touched on a bunch, there are so many guys down here who are genuinely viable, who have a chance to give you a top 5 or a top 10 that can really help bring you up the leaderboard. So I'd just rather take a chance on one of those guys who, if he does super well, he's dramatically helping my lineup. Whereas if you have a 25% Hoey and Hoey finishes 6th, it's helpful, of course, but especially if he's in 40% of Scotty lineups, it's not helping you that much. So go where the payoff is greatest when we have this many options.
What about this too? Man, this probably helps build the lineup. I haven't really dug in fully on this yet, but Ryan Gerard is also someone that's getting just talked up massive. And so I think in the higher stakes. So that's what I was talking about to Haggy earlier, with that King of the Desert one. I just don't, those beat you, man, they beat you. But if you run the chalk version of Scotty, Hoey, Gerard, all that shit, what you really want to hope is Hoey and Gerard fail because that range fails. It's even if you don't have a pivot there, maybe it's you got 2 upper 6K guys, a lower 7, and then you boost up to something in the 8s or whatever. You know what I mean? There's different ways to go about it, but you kind of just want this range to just, even if they have a good week, you don't want it to be a great week. And Gerard looks really good on paper as well after last week and just some of the stuff I saw people talking him up. Do you have any? I mean, he's right there, same price as Hoey. Does he kind of fit the same build in the conversation, or is it just McGreevy that's kind of out for you?
No, I mean, I think I'd put Gerard in the same conversation as Hoey, where he's definitely a solid play, projects well for his price. But again, like we only have him at 15% single entry ownership, so not the 25% that Hoey is. But still, if I'm comparing like Ryan Gerard to Wyndham Clark, for example, you're going to get somewhere between 3 to 5 times the ownership on Gerard as you would Clark, and we have them neck and neck in terms of like their actual projections. In fact, we have Wyndham slightly better in ceiling probabilities, just because he projects 0.07 strokes worse, but is the far more volatile player. So when he plays well, it's going to be just that much more impactful for you. So like, I'm never going to click Gerard instead of Wyndham Clark. And so it's nothing against Gerard. It's just, I think there are better plays because of the lower ownership on some guys around him.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking about too when I'm looking there. I guess the other conversation, we don't really go by tiers, but because today was so much about Scotty, is like how are you handling, I think this is a big conversation of like the 8K range, because it typically goes overlooked no matter what you do by the looks of things. Like, again, you might get one in there, but I think any lineup that had 2 8K guys would just be naturally different, because it's just so hard to land in that range unless you kind of sneak one in there of like a Scotty 8K, and then you have the 6s that make the 7s finish and like that type of thing. But you just don't see a lot of people landing on those. And you still have Pendrith, Noren, Kitayama, Thor, Hogard, Fowler, Minwoo, Davis Thompson, Jason Day, and Poston, to name them all. So there's definitely options in there.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. This is going to be related to my leverage lane, but yeah, anyone who was listening closely probably noticed the fact that we went through 2 different groups of chalk. We had Griffin, Henley, McIntyre, and Siwoo Kim. So bottoming out there at $9,000. And then we went Hoey, Gerard, Meisner, and McGreevy, topping out at 7,700. It means everyone between 78 and 8,900 is not, fully chalk. With the highest owned we have in that group is Kurt Kitayama at 15% in single entries. Now that could be higher if we're wrong about Scotty. Of course, as I mentioned, like the Scotty ownership is going to affect everything. So being wrong about him will make us wrong about a lot of other stuff. So it's possible that Kitayama comes in 2025, and I'm not completely correct in saying that no one in between that is going to be super popular, but a lot of these guys, most of these guys are really, really going to be overlooked because you just can't get to them. Like if you have Scotty, you have 71 something remaining for your last 5 spots. At most, therefore, you can use 2 in the 8K range. So that's a huge portion of the field that at most can use 1 or 2 of the guys in this range. They're just not going to be highly owned whatsoever. And even in the non-Scotty lineups, there aren't going to be a lot of people getting to them because of how many guys are popular above them in that 9 to 10.5K range. So it really is an overlooked range this week. And to your point, like it's not like it's overlooked because everyone there should be priced in the 7,000s. There are some very good players, even some guys who played well last week in that range.
Yeah, that's what would stand out to me is, like I said, it becomes a bit of a dead range. So again, maybe not for everybody's single entry, but I do think it's pretty interesting if you're going not with, like the way Alex portrayed his example of how you could go, the way I talked about Scotty, and we'll talk about him further in a minute, but the setup of if you went like 2 10Ks, 2 8Ks, and 2 6Ks, I definitely think is an intriguing build, and I'll have some of those in my alternate stuff, even in like my alternate mains or 3 max. I'm going to play some more outside of my main single entry, but just noting it, that one stood out a little bit more to me just because the 8Ks in some cases look better than or just as good, equal to at least of the 9K guys.
Yep.
Right. So I think that's at least something that stood out to me there. Anything else we missed, my friend, or anything else you want to touch on? I know we want to do the betting breakdown if you've got something for this week, and then we will chat through our lane and then get out of here, I think. But really good conversation back and forth today. Do you have anything else on the DFS side before we get to the betting breakdown?
No, I think it's time for the betting breakdown.
Let's do it. What do you got for us today?
So it's unfortunate because this has been one of the absolute best weeks of the entire year for me on the pick'em side. Had an awesome Sunday in the NFL streets. Awesome weekend in the NFL streets, and then I think we've had a 3-pick hit in the NBA with only 1 or 2 3-picks per night in like 5 of the last 6 nights or something. We went 4 of 6 last night. Almost went 6 for 6. So it's been awesome, and I was really hoping to have a bunch of PGA pick'em stuff for everyone today. I don't. They just haven't given us anything good. The closest, the one that I've used most often and most successfully in PGA is tournament finishing position. They just haven't given us many, although I do see they have added a couple from when I last looked. So maybe there are some opportunities there or no. Like if you go to tourney finishing position, the only guy right now that you can choose worse on is Scotty at 4.5. So like what we were praying on last year was worst 20.5 finishing position for like Ludwig Oberg, for example. We are not able to use that. So I don't really have anything on the pick'em side. Outrights, I do love Dan Brown 250 to 1. Let me see what he's available at now, because I gave that out a few days ago. But as I mentioned with Brown, like the thing I'm looking for someone with a small sample, because ordinarily one of the key parts of my process when it comes to finding outrights isn't predicting what's the median outcome for a player. It's predicting what his event to event and round to round volatility is. If we can accurately identify how volatile a player is, we can more accurately identify who's most likely to have that like really tail outcome that actually lets you contend to win a tournament. When we don't have extensive data on a player like Daniel Brown, what I'm looking for is the type of spikes within categories that can combine to make a big spike. He spikes a ton with the irons. He spikes a ton with the putter. There aren't many categories that you can combine quite like irons and putter to really vault yourself up a leaderboard. And obviously these are the types of courses where both of those skill sets are going to come in handy this week. So I really like Dan Brown now, and he's at 200 to 1 most places. I'm not able to get the Bet365 number up on my screen that I actually bet at.
250 with the each way.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's what I got. 250 to 1 with the each way over on Bet365. It sounds like that's still available. So yeah, I think that's a phenomenal bet this week. And I do think people notice like my betting style, especially with outrights, it's not like most people's. I'm going to have some weeks where I have 6, 7, 8 outrights, all in the like 50 to 100 to 1 range. And then I'm going to have weeks where I have 1 and it's 250 to 1. Obviously, I'm extremely unlikely to win my outright this week or to win any outright this week with only one bet at 251. I don't care. Outrights are just part of my process. DFS, pick'em stuff, all of that. So I don't need, to feel like I have a good chance at a sweat to feel good about my betting card for a week. And I'm always just kind of chasing the actual value. And I think that's where it is this week on Dan Brown.
Almost like you actually play DFS, not just talk about it. So you might have other stuff to sweat as well. Real money on the line. So we love that. But the people caught, do you know about the 6-7? You must by now know about the 6-7 phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
You notice how much I notice people say it now just randomly. You said 6 or 7 bets each week possible. It's like everyone just throws 6-7 out there no matter what. They don't even notice it anymore. But I love the Dan Brown call. If you think about it, like I just said, he finished the same as Henley and Ben Griffin last week. They're 25 to 1 and he's 10x that. And not saying, he's as good as them. I'm just saying, can he beat them on any given week? Yes. Can he beat them at the Amex where long shots can get there? Absolutely. So if you can get 250 to 1 with the each ways, if you don't have the each ways, you can still get a big number and then go bet the top 5 on top or something like that. If you want to sort of build your own version of it, definitely think that's an opportunity as well. And we'll continue to bring you what we have each week with the betting breakdown as we do. I might even try and get a few of these things into the street soon. You can tee me up and I'll give some stuff as well.
There you go. And the last point I'll make here is like for all of the attention that like Marco Penge and Christopher Wrighton got coming over this year, Daniel Brown was close to as good as them, if not better than them for a lot of last season. He won the BMW International Open in July. He was second at the Open de España, where Penge actually beat him in a playoff. So like we're talking about the same caliber of player. If Marco Penge was teeing it up this week at 250 to 1, he'd be by far the most popular bet in the entire industry. I just don't understand why he's at such long odds. He's a really, really good player, and I think fits this course rotation pretty well too.
All right, so odds are now 200 to 1 with the each way as everybody goes and hits it immediately. But I really like the sell. I think it's, again, that's what we're looking for: value, opportunity, comparisons, ways we can think about it. Doesn't mean it's going to hit, but it's just thinking about it from that type of perspective. So I love that when you go through it that way. I do want to pick your brain on something. You have 2 more minutes, just on one and done, right? And how you think about it. I know. So I got to bring this up. I forgot to earlier, but this is going to be fun. We did get a one and done from Splash Sports. And I'm excited about this because it's after the little wave of everything ends. It's even after Super Bowl and all that. It's $100. Splash gave 150,000 guaranteed. It's a $20,000 first place prize. It's 200 people get paid $100 buy-in. You guys can go check it out here, but it's the 150K one and done. What is just one and done theory in your mind, just in general, to start with here? Like what's sort of the way you think about it, and then how do you apply it on a week to week basis? Like if you're looking at one and done options this week, I don't think you're picking Scotty is probably the most obvious, because even if he was to win, there's just so many other places that the course or the whole tournament with 4 tough rounds in a major and things like that suit him better. Plus the money that goes up top. Again, that's like the easiest side, I think, of the strategy to it. But what are your one and done thoughts as we get into it here and round this thing out?
Yeah, unfortunately, like the very first thing that we have to take note of is just the massive difference in prize pools when you get to majors and signature events compared to these events. I think one and done was a much more fun. I still love it, but it was more fun when you actually had to like make a decision of, okay, do I want Scotty in a slightly smaller purse event when his odds to win are a lot higher? You can't even consider him nowadays with how much more money there is in those signature events and major championships. So basically anyone who that there's a good chance you're going to want to use in a signature event at some point, you got to just start with them off the board. And then you're just kind of taking the best of the remaining guys. And I do think you want to consider potential ownership as well. It's certainly harder to nail ownership in the one and done contest than it is on DraftKings. We just have so much less data on preferences. But what I have noticed is there's absolutely a correlation between projected DraftKings ownership and ownership in the one and done. So honestly, Tambo, like how many entries do you have in the Pat Mayo Open?
I've got one and my dad has one.
Okay. I've got 3. Should we turn one of those 3 into a leverage lane dual entry?
I'm down for sure. Yeah. I think that'd be fun.
Let's do it.
What did you use on week one, though? Let me tell you. Actually, I might change my mind. No, I'm kidding. What did you use week one?
I was going to say, I did not get us off to a good start. I have 3 different lineups. I used 3 different guys. They all sucked. So
what's the worst one? Let's use the worst one.
Okay, yeah, we'll do the worst one. I mean, I think I had a miscut. I think I had Chris Kirk miss the cut, so we can use that one.
If you don't mind, I mean, that's fun.
I mean, I used 3 scrubs. I think the best player that I used was either Kirk or Matt McCarty, whoever you want to say is the better player. So McCarty had a chance to make a run and then just was awful. I think it was the second half of his day 2. He got up to like 6 under, 2 strokes off the lead or something, and then made a 7. So then his week was over and never got it going again from there. But yeah, so like when I look at this week, I'm thinking, okay, I'm not going to use Scotty, Cantlay, Oberg, Griffin, Burns, Henley, Fitz, McIntyre, Siwoo. I wouldn't be totally opposed to Siwoo. Like to me, that's kind of where it starts is the Hall, Straka, English, Siwoo, and then you can go further down the board, as far down the board as you want. Like I'm not going to go use a 251 Dan Brown in the one and done, but I also wouldn't have an issue going to like, Keith Mitchell or Ryan Gerard or Kevin Yu. The only other type of player that I don't want is like a Wyndham Clark type where let's say Wyndham wins this week. Our outlook of Wyndham for the rest of the season is going to be a lot different than it is right now. If Wyndham returns to form that he had 2 years ago, we're going to end up wanting him in a signature event. So anyone who has the potential to show us that, hey, they're a much better player, they have a much better outlook for the rest of the season than what we think of them right now, I don't want to touch that player. I want someone who we're not likely to think much higher of 2 months from now than we do right now.
Yeah, and I think that matters with the former of what you said too about like the prize pools and that what you're who you're saving for a certain event. I guess where I see a lot of the questions, and this is just my probably last one, then we can get to our lane. But like a Cantlay or a Griffin, let's use those two. What would you be saving Patrick Cantlay for? Or it's just because there's options to come that you could see him being used, or like Griffin kind of still playing pretty good right now, him or Henley, like they're riding something, but they were really good last year, and that's what made them conversation pieces this year. But where can you see saving them for? I guess that's the part I think people struggle with the most. Cause like, I know I'm not using Scotty, but can't I use a Griffin here? Like when else would I use him? I don't know.
So to me, the answer is actually really simple there. It's in an event where Scotty's not playing, because the fact that Scotty's playing just slashes so much off of all of their win equities that like we're going to get an event at some point this season where Cantlay is at least like one of the best players and not way behind one specific guy. We're going to have an event almost certainly where Ben Griffin is the very clear-cut best player. And on the one hand, like typically, again, I don't want to use the highest owned guy, but let's say 2 months from now, we're rolling. We've already hit on a couple winners. We can suddenly play a lot more of the chalk. So as of right now, I still want to be assuming that I'm going to be doing very well 3 months from now. And when we get a field where Ben Griffin is the clear-cut best player, I'm just going to use him there. So, at 2 months from now, maybe we get there and we're not doing well in our entry and we don't want to use the most popular guy in the field. But for now, I think it's perfectly okay to assume that we're going to be in position where we can. And so I want to get a little bit different. I will toss out my top choice, and that's Ricky Fowler.
Nice.
Not someone I expected to be hyping up this early in the season, but only $8,400 in DraftKings, not going to be popular. He's going to be very low owned in the one and done. He finished last season playing outstanding golf, very reminiscent golf to his 2023 self, where he was like a top 10 player on tour. Didn't win multiple times or anything like that. So it wasn't quite like the Ben Griffin season of last year. But in terms of just consistently being in contention and consistently being top 20, top 10, he was that good in 2023 and he finished that way last year. And I think there's a good chance he brings that right into this season. And I'm not worried about him like elevating to the point where he's going to win multiple times on tour. I think he's just the guy who's going to be around a few leads. And so I think he's a really good player early on here in a lesser field. I'm not going to want him when, we need the massive spike week from him to beat an elevated field. But this is the kind of field where I think he can contend and potentially win at really, really low ownership for the one and done.
I like that call. I liked your Siwoo option earlier because he kind of feels the same. Like obviously we know he's capable. He's definitely solid, but like when are we going to save him for? With Ricky, it's not like even there's a wait and see approach because even if he does come out guns blazing, it's like, okay, now what? Like where do we go with him at versus some of those other guys like you talked about where it applies more. So I'm comfortable with that just to make up. I think that people will like that we added this segment in just before our leverage lane. So it's kind of like the betting breakdown, the one and done mix in, and then we'll go to our leverage lane for DFS. But I think that's fine, especially making up for a Kirk miscut on week one, just to say, give it a shot. So yeah, I'm good with that. And we'll talk about it next week and see how it goes. But I like the breakdown of it. And I think it was a really solid breakdown of like Griffin and Cantlay, maybe not like what you're saving them for as much as the reason you're saving them. It's like we don't know where yet, but there should be somewhere where they don't have to go up against Scotty's 20 to 33% win equity, whatever you guys have them out there for. So I think that's a good call out as well.
So I'm comfortable with either Fowler or Siwoo. I think both are really good options. It sounds like you might have a stronger preference to Siwoo.
I guess the way when you broke it down like that, it's like, okay, we saw something out of him. We know he's capable here. I don't have anything else to say. It reminds me of like maybe a better version of Ricky, but obviously taking the little bit more risk of Ricky, I think is fine when you're only in week 2 earlier in the season. And who knows, like you definitely could use Siwoo other places. I don't really have anything marked for Ricky where I'm like, okay, let's use him. So do you have a tiebreaker for that or how you think of that just on my explanation?
I think for me, I was comfortable having Siwoo because I'm not expecting to want to use him at a later point. You think that we might, so let's go Ricky this week.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Let's do Ricky and then see how it goes from there.
Cool.
All right, let's get to the finale, the leverage lane for the week. Mine will be quick. I'll go through it and then I'll leave you the honors to round it out. But mine is going to be pretty straightforward. I'm playing Scotty and nobody over 10%. So it'll all be orchestrated out. If somebody somehow gets into like 11%, I'm sure people will be out there looking to call it out. But I'm not playing like the Gerards, the Hoeys. I'm not sure yet if we'll land on like an 8K and then down to the 6s. But the way I'm looking at it, the $200 single entry where I'm going to play my main, that's the lineup I'm talking about. I'm going to have Scotty with 5 guys under 10%. And like you said, there's tons of ways it can get there, but I'm going to do it up that way. So that's construction and commitment at the same time. You have something different, I think, but what's yours?
Yeah, I'm going to hammer the upper 7s to low 9Ks. There are so many guys in this range who are really quality players. I think like, we look at Scotty and we say, okay, he's $14,200. even though they can't really go higher than that, he's still underpriced for what he does. But to me, like, all of these guys in the 7 to 9s are also underpriced. All of these guys could be easily another $1,000 more expensive than they are. And I can only use one underpriced guy when it comes to Scotty, or I can use 5 underpriced guys when it comes to this range. So I'm going to go this route. And like, just to name, like, basically everyone that I'm considering that I think is underowned and underpriced here: Wyndham, Kevin Yu, Cootie, Rose, Adam Scott, Poston, Day, Fowler, Thor Bjornsson, Noren, Pendrith, English, Straka, Hall. You can even throw Fitz and Sam Burns in there if you want. Like, it's crazy how many of these guys I really, really like and think not just are underpriced, but also underowned. Kitayama's close. He projects really well for us. I just think he's going to be slightly more popular. But, like, man, you can build some really, really strong lineups just from this group. Maybe you go like one guy up above them, but I just want to hammer this group. I think Scotty's existence on this slate has just made this massive dead zone where it's not that the field is ignoring these guys because the field doesn't think they're worth any ownership. The field is just being pushed into builds that naturally are forced away from this group. So I want to hammer this group as much as possible.
Love that final point too, because you not fully saying, but leaning to it. And just to finalize my 2 cents on it would be that's another thing is when people aren't going there, it's because they're either going to the guys under Scotty or going to Scotty. When you build that lineup, yes, Scotty crushes you probably if he wins. Like, again, we did all the math, don't need to rehash it, but it's like probably, yeah, you're probably in trouble, but you're building it with the sense that that's not going to happen. You're building it with that it's not just not going to be Scotty, but those Scotty people, the options that he drags along or you're hoping drag along. What if it is just 4 of those guys up the middle that you end up needing that all do really well? And then there's a ton of combinations around them that would make it work. So I really do like that. If you can find builds like that, even for your single entry, I'm comfortable. Like I say, it's all about, that's what leveraged lane is about. You're picking your lane. It's not here to copy Alex or copy me. Do what you feel is best. It's up to you, your money, your investment, etc. But I think that's the key to remember is there's different ways to go about it. Ones that definitely make more sense than others or feel better than others. But that's really what this was all about. Hopefully this exercise and just breaking it all down from that perspective was fun. Let the people know what you got going on, Alex, and where to find you, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, everything you can find of mine over on Twitter at Alex Blickle1, whether you want the GPP scores and the projections over at FTN, or you want the pick 'em and props or the advanced DFS theory. We had some really fun conversations about running one lineup up against a bunch of lineups from other guys in the last few weeks. And then also had some really fun giveaways. We're doing another one this week where everyone in the Discord can submit a bet to me privately, and whoever submits the longest odd bet that wins the contest. And so there's a fun strategy level where you have to kind of predict, well, what kind of bet is everyone else going to submit? We ran it last week. Everyone submitted like plus 100,000 parlays that lost. And so no one won. So we're running it back this week. And so I expect to see a different strategy, but yeah, we're just always kind of doing some fun stuff there and trying to get better at DFS and betting kind of as a communal effort there.
Yeah. How many people just want to get Dan Brown in on their stuff this week just to say, take the 250 to 1 and call it a day? I'm definitely betting that after all the conversation around it. So I'm excited for that. If you guys want to check out Ship It Nation, I know somebody said they just joined there. Just join the nation right now. Yeah, that's a great spot to be. We did keep the early bird special on. We decided to run it through Waste Management. Now, a lot of people are waiting until football ends and want to sort of run out their football membership and then hop over. So $349 includes SaberSim. And then we did partner with Rick Rungood and his tools. If you want to get the entire bundle, $549 includes everything. Why is that important? Look at the competition. Most charging $5 to $5.99 for their packages. This is $549, including all of our stuff. The Stone, the course fit rankings, the slate plans, all the showdown stuff, the education courses, but then you also get SaberSim Optimizer and Rick Rungood tools. So a lot of good stuff there. Alex, this show was a ton of fun, man. I think no matter how people go, hopefully everybody has some big weeks, but hopefully they learned a lot, could take a ton away. If you guys do have any feedback, let us know in the comments after the show ends, or if you're watching it on playback. That's going to do it for this week. We'll be back next week, 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday. For Alex, for myself, ToeTagginTambo, let's ship it.